Number 23 on chapter 18.
Chapter 18, verse 23. What page?
Don't have the page.
Okay.
I'll find it. Page 323.
Page 323. Will you help us out?
Kutrapi na jihasasti, nasho vapi na kutrachit, atmaramasya dhirasya, shitalacha taratmanaha.
Oh, this is a great one.
The wise who delights in the self, whose mind is serene and pure, has no desire to renounce anything whatsoever, nor does he feel any loss anywhere.
So the term the verse is using here is Atmaramana, one of my favorite expressions. Ram Ramati means to revel. So the god Rama means reveler. Ramana Maharshi, his name is he who revels. Atmaramana, to revel or to delight in the self. So the idea that the verse is communicating has to do with what is it that pulls the mind out of the world. The ruthless rule of the mind is the mind will return to the experience that's given it the greatest joy. This is why, for example, I just got a phone call yesterday from a friend who's struggled with crystal meth addiction, crystal meth with sex. It's so euphoric, keeps pulling him back, keeps pulling him back. Thank God, God is the most beloved, or we'd all be in trouble. So what happens to the mind? The classic image I like to use, I use this in the beginning class. If you had a tricycle as a child, you loved your tricycle and you were pedaling all around on it, and then you got old enough to get a two-wheeled bike. Maybe started with training wheels, finally they come off, then you're zooming up and down the neighborhood on your two-wheeled bike. What happens to your love and your desire for the tricycle? Maybe in memory, oh yes, that old tricycle's there in the garage. I'm too big for it now. And of course, after that, you get your first car, and it just keeps progressing. But the idea is, if the mind is given something that fulfills it deeply, it lets go of lesser things easily. So this is why samadhi is important. You can't be attached to samadhi, but you can't renounce something you don't have. Swami Tejo Mayananda used to say, I renounce being president of the United States. That's nonsense. He was never going to be president. So we have to develop that trick of the yogi to be able to let go of the world. Shankara will use language, who's a full knower of the Supreme, who has retired into the Supreme. Gita will use language like that one who has cast off all the desires of the mind, O Partha, and is satisfied in the self, by the self. When we have that, then the world is held different. It's like what I used to think was precious gems and gold is seen to be trinkets and baubles. Who's there? There's a little enjoyment in things. But the yogi has another playground. Any thoughts on this? Next verse.
Prakritya shunyachittasya kurvatosya yaduchya prakritasya dhirasya namano navamanata. Void in mind by nature, and doing what comes of itself unasked. The wise one, unlike a common man, is not affected by honor or dishonor.
Shunya chitta, is that what he said?
Yeah.
Yes, I love that term. Shunya means empty or void. Having an empty or void mind. Now, all I can share with you is when I was hanging with Swamiji, he'd be blah, 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 or doing this, that, or explaining this principle, or answering that question, or sitting there watching a tennis match. He loved to watch tennis. But if you tune up to him, he was so empty. The world cannot impinge on that for the woman, for the man. Deep abidance in the self. Wonderful, wonderful term. When I was hanging with Mahatma in Jaipur with Dave back in 2015, they treated me with great respect because, you know, I was there in a white dhoti and stuff like that. I was Chinmay mission, you know. Anyway, so if you were special, when they had prasad, rather than getting the small bowl of fruit, you got the large bowl of fruit. Big deal. So one day they gave me a small bowl. And Gurudev, this is Bhuvaneshwar, a little tweet by it. He said, no. He's supposed to get, Sababa, he's supposed to get the big bowl. Don't worry about it, I'm too fat anyway. And then I said to him, but you've given me the greatest. I use the term Mauna Prasad, the gift of silence, smiling, Shunya Prasad. Not just silence, but emptiness. this shunya chitta, this atmaramana, words fall short. But you know it. Next verse.
Kritam dehena karmedam na maya shuddharupina iti chintanurodhi yaha kurvanapi karotina. One who acts in conformity with thoughts such as, this is done by the body and not by me, the pure self. Such a person, even though acting, does not act.
So those of us, when we did our study of I am that, this is the kind of language Nisargadatta Maharaj used. I stand ever apart, unattached. I am that pure consciousness, ever illuminating the body, mind, intellect. No real distinction between this lump of flesh and any other lump of flesh. All are mine and none are mine. So chaitanya is the word Sargadatta used. It's translated, it's all in the play of consciousness. Nothing affects, touches, is done by me. And all action is done by me. There's never any individual doer. It's an illusion. Next one.
Atadvadiva kurute na bhavedapi balishaha jivan mukta sukhi shriman sansarannapi shobhate. The liberated in life, even though acts like one, does not say why he is acting so, is not thereby a fool. He flourishes in the world and is happy and even blessed.
Interesting. I was working with someone, and oftentimes when I work with someone, I have no idea what I'm going to say. And he got triggered and says, why did you say that? He happens to have been a psychotherapist, so he kept trying to turn it back on me. Why did you say that? What was going on with you? And I just had to say to him, I don't know. I have no idea. The person of steady wisdom, the Jivan Mukta, is out of control. Absolute trust of the process. This deep, deep understanding that the same power that makes a daisy grow perfectly. daisies don't go. I should have been a rose. I'm not a lily. So for the woman of realization, no judgment. Now, we have to be careful because this teaching is for advanced students. If a beginner or an intermediate student takes on this teaching, there's the possible pitfall of rationalizing bad behavior. So prior to that, we need to have made sure we have attained to Yoga Rudha. This is a term we get in Gita, mounting the steed of the mind, where we can quiet and be free from the tyranny of the indulgent part of the mind. It's what I call the inner 2-year-old. I don't want to go to bed. I want ice cream. If we confuse intuition with indulgence, we're still at the effect of the tyranny of the mind. Scripture says that person just does what they feel like doing. There's perfect trust in it. I'm angry at you, I think I'll hit you. No. So first, we need to make this distinction, Yoga Rudha, where I'm totally in the now. I have no resistance. I've dialed down my reactivity to the phenomena. I've practiced that emptiness of just letting things pass through. Then, do as you will. Our deep intuition is never going to hurt another person. It's not about teaching people a lesson. It's not about pointing things out. It's always more expression, more creativity, more life. The person of steady wisdom feels unity with all of life everywhere. So there's this natural compassion, natural empathy. Very important. I cannot tell you how many times I've heard people say, oh, I was studying with such and such a teacher, and they turned out to be a womanizer. They turned out to be a drunk. They turned out to be a thief. And it's not about being a goody-goody. That's not wisdom either. That's all I want to say about this for now. But we have to be very careful about this. The teaching of what the Tibetan Buddhists call crazy wisdom. But the prior practice is to attain to Yoga Rudha. Now, do as you will. Any thoughts on this?
what comes to mind is, the writers, uh, they learn all the rules of writing a book, and then once they learn the rules, they can break them.
Same thing with music. You spend all your time practicing, developing technique, so that when you sit down at the piano for performance, you forget about technique. Then you can be a channel, or for the singer, the same thing. Excellent metaphor. Good example. All right, next one.
Nana vichara sushanto dhiro vishranti magataha na kalpate na janati na shrunoti na pashyati. The wise man who has withdrawn himself from diverse reasonings and has attained complete repose neither thinks nor knows, nor hears nor sees.
So the idea here is that prior to being rooted in knowledge, we practice. We have jnana abhyasa. I practice vichara, discrimination between the real and the unreal. I practice vairagya, letting go. But for the person who's rooted in knowledge, there's no more practice to be done. It's kind of like this. If there is an anorexic person who has the false belief that they're obese, they bend over sideways and their skin wrinkles. Look, I'm fat, I'm fat, I'm fat. Then the therapist or the doctor says, no, sweetheart, you're painfully thin. They're under delusion. They have dysphoria. In time, if they recover from their anorexia, they can begin to see when they have a normal weight. And then you can let go of the practice such that for an ordinary person, you don't look in the mirror and say, oh, I've become a cockroach. There's no doubt. You don't have to practice knowing you have a human body. You don't have dysphoria at that level. Likewise, for you and me, we have this strange idea, I'm not the self. So I have to practice. I have to go through the spiritual therapy over and over again. I'm not the body. I'm not any of the koshas. Aham prabhasmi. Chidananda rupam. Shivoham. Till we get rooted. So you either see it or you don't. There's no such thing as getting more and more enlightened or a process of enlightenment. No. It's sudden. You either see it or you don't. It's like the bunnies in the picture on the Sunday comics. Can you find 10 bunnies in the picture? You either see them or you don't. There's lots and lots of mind states, and they're fun. But that's not knowledge of yourself. When you have superimposed the snake onto the rope, I've been doing rope yoga for 20 years. The head of the snake has turned into a rope. I'm advancing. Well, or to me, the most tragic one. I get out a baseball bat and I just beat the crap out of that snake. Hopefully, then it'll run away and I'll see the rope. Do you engage in mortification of the flesh? Do you beat yourself up, thinking somehow that's going to improve things? No, you investigate. Oh, so weird. That rope really looked like a snake. But now that I see it and I touch it, the chara I've investigated, I see, no, it's not a snake. It's a rope. Then I don't need to practice it anymore. Driving down Highway 5 in the hot summer. I see a mirage on Highway 5. My senses report water, my knowledge is water. I slow down from 120 to 35. And I see the water keeps receding as I drive further. And I go, cool. It's a mirage. Once I see it, I don't have to go, it's not water, it's a mirage. It's not water, it's a mirage. You know. In the Middle Ages, people wouldn't want to sail too far from land because they were afraid their boats would fall off the edge of the world. They were deceived because of the horizon. You understand the curvature of the earth. We can go out to Ocean Beach. We see a tanker ship head out to sea, headed towards Asia. We see it drop below the horizon. You see it? Oh, the poor ship, it's fallen off the edge of the world. You don't think that. You don't have to practice. So what the verse is saying here, when your knowledge is rooted, it's yourself, for God's sake. When are you ever not you? You may choose to meditate. You may enjoy samadhi. It's pleasurable. It's a worldly pleasure. But it does not add to your knowledge of the self. Next verse.
Asamadhera vikshepan mumukshurna chetaraha nishchitya kalpitam pashyan brahmaivaste mahashayaha. Since the wise one has no agitations and does not practice meditation, he is not an aspirant for liberation, nor is he in bondage. Having known the universe to be a figment of his imagination, even though he sees it, he exists as Brahman itself.
So he does not, here it says practice meditation. The word is samadhi, I think, isn't it?
Yeah,
Asamadhi.
asamate.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So the mumukshu, seeker after after liberation, is seen to be doing spiritual practices that he may purify his mind so he may realize the self. But the woman of realization may be seen to be doing a spiritual practice, but it does not add to her knowledge of the self. It's fun. Feels good. It's the highest form of worldly pleasure. And I remember again from the Nisargadatta Maharaj text, I had that. One of the disciples says, "Are you in samadhi all the time?" Any of you remember that question? What was his answer? Of course not. I am beyond all my states. So Shankara, in his great hymn, Nirvana Shatakam, one of the verses starts off, Aham nirvikalpa. Translated, it doesn't say, I am in nirvikalpa. It says, I am nirvikalpa. In me, there are no vikalpas. In me, there is no movement. All of this is just by arises. It's not real. Now, some Mahatmas like Sri Ramakrishna, you just started to mention the word God, and you go, off you go. Deep into samadhi. Or like Anandamayi Ma, the great mid-20th century saint. Sometimes she'd be so lost in the self, she literally couldn't like feed herself and stuff like that. They'd have to kind of like take care of the body. She was so gone. But those are mind states. How gone you get, that's karmic. But knowledge is freedom. To know I am none of those things. Now contrast 3-4 verses ago, he was saying, Aparamana, travel in the self. He says, don't practice samadhi, meaning if you make this Atmaramana, oh, I gotta have it, I gotta have it, I gotta have it. You're not even a jnani, you're there making egoistic efforts. Let go. Next one.
Yasyantah syadhahankaro na karoti karoti sa nirahankara dhirena na kinchit kritam kritam. He who has the ego sense in him within acts mentally, even though he does not act physically. Surely the wise one who is free from the sense of ego does not act mentally, even though he acts physically.
So if I have that identification as the doer and the enjoyer, then I am sitting in meditation. I am advancing. I have been able to sit for 8 hours today. I am immovable. My nose itches and I do not scratch it. So even though they may be seen to be not moving, they're moving. But the person of knowledge is ever still like the center of a cyclone. The phenomenal world moves about. I am Achalam. Never move. Next one.
No dvigam na cha santushtam kartrispanda varjitam nirasham gata sandeham chittam muktasya rajate. The mind of the liberated is neither troubled nor pleased. It is actionless, free from fluctuations, desireless, and purged of all doubts.
So, how does this happen? The woman of knowledge doesn't believe her mind. Boss, I cannot think a real thought. What I just thought it. Thoughts may go by, but there's no value to them. First of all, as you get quieter and quieter and quieter within, I got news for you. The emptier you get, the more you will experience the thoughts and feelings of others as if they were your own. And after a while, you can't tell. Did that thought come out of my own karmic stream? Is it my thought? Or is it something that's coming into this one's psyche from the group mind? So this distinction of your mind and my mind, gone. It's just mine. And none of it is real. Here's a very good meditation to carry through the day. I have no thoughts or feelings of my own. They do not belong to me. Now, this is absolutely contrary to psychology. What are you feeling? What's really going on with you? Are you angry? Are you fearful? Are you depressed? Are you triggered? Inner child? How do you know it's not the inner child of the person on the bus next to you? Now, at our earlier levels of sadhana, it's of value when the cocoon of ego is very thick to resolve some of these issues. Absolutely. But as that cocoon of the small self breaks down, not only can you no longer find a thing called me, the individual, but you can't find a thing called my mind. That's gone. Now you're a mommy. I bet you've had the intuitive feeling. You know when something's amiss with a child, even if they're not even in the same room. Am I right?
Right.
And how do you know it? You feel it as if it's your own.
Right.
Don't you?
Right.
Truth is, that's going on all the time. Not just with your kids, with everybody and everything. And there's no escape from mind unless you want to go live on top of a mountain all by yourself. And some yogis do that. But others, deeply understanding the unreality of mind, have no difficulty in this body moving through the world. Now, here's a key. This is kind of more of the tantric kind of teaching. I was talking with someone yesterday about, I just got to get out of this environment. You know, it's just toxic. Got to get away from this. It's toxic, unhealthy. Let me give you a teaching. The awareness of suffering is an invitation to prayer. Why has the Lord brought this suffering to your attention? Why not return good for evil, as the Master Jesus said? Simple, I mean, there's all sorts of techniques, but one of my favorites, one of the simplest ones, is the Tibetan meditation, Tonglen. Breathe in the suffering that you're aware of. And then you deliberately and consciously exhale the end. So right now in the group mind, there's all this fear and anger about mass shootings. You don't have to be afraid of it. You don't have to turn the news off. If you're aware of it, you know, breathe in this suffering. Don't resist. Breathe out peace and healing. Breathe in the suffering. Breathe out peace and healing. Nothing to fear. Nothing to get away from. How can you get away? Wherever you go, there you are. Do not underestimate the incredible power of holding sacred space. Empty out so that the power of the infinite can come through and do its work. Jim, how do you tune this all up? What do you do? I don't do anything. It's literally a not do. I disappear. I let the Lord do it. That makes sense. How did the Master Jesus say it? I of myself do no thing. It is the Father within that doeth the work. Next verse.
Nidhyatum chishtatum vapi yachittam na pravartate nirnimittamidam kintu nidharyati vicheshtate. The mind of the liberated one does not engage itself either in meditation or in activity. It becomes meditative and active without any motive, spontaneously.
Yes. So again, the mind of the person of wisdom is out of control. Spontaneously, it becomes meditative or active. Then finally, your equipment becomes the hand of God in this world. Then we become useful. We're talking about the personal God. To the degree that you and I, at the level of the equipment, can be shunya chitta, empty mind. Then Mother Shakti can come through, do her healing work, her saving work, redemptive. Let me summarize this again. The greatest gift we can give to the world is to hold sacred space. How do you do that? Go away. Empty. Empty out. I can't, he can't, I can hold it. Next one. How many more in this chapter?
1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7.
Quite a few. Okay.
Yeah. Tattvam yatharthamakarnya mandaha prapnoti mutthatam athva yati sankocham murhopi murhavat. An unintelligent person becomes confused on hearing the real truth, but some intelligent man withdraws within and lives like a fool.
So if all we have is book knowledge, paroksha jnanam, indirect knowledge, we can get fused. Susili and I were talking about, do we get confused by what appears to be inconsistencies in the teaching? And I love what Nisargadatta Maharaj said, I make no claim of consistency. I choose the term divine schizophrenia. All depends on from what viewpoint we're seeing. We're seeing from the viewpoint of the Jagat, of the creation. Certain things are so. We're seeing from the absolute. It's different. Is there a God, Jim? Well, yes and no. If you're in the Jagat, in the creation, of course there's a God. And if you're ego identified, hang on to the feet of the Lord. But if your mind drops, you see the fundamental unreality of all phenomena. I am Atma Brahma, this self is Brahma. Sarvam Kalvidam Brahma, this entire phenomenal world is verily Brahma. God is inside, God is outside, it's all God. Both are true. Next one.
Ekagrata nirodho va mudhera pyasyate prisham dhiraha krityana pashyanti subtvat svapade sthitaha. The fools constantly practice concentration and control of the mind. The wise, abiding in their own self, like persons in deep sleep, do not find anything to be attained.
So I wouldn't be quite so harsh and say the fool. I would say the beginner, the intermediate student practices control of the mind. If you remember what the second sutra is in the Yoga Sutra,
Yoga chitta vritti nirodha.
yoga is the restraining of the mind stuff from forming vrittis. That's control. And it's not control. If all vrittis are unreal, all vrittis are controlled. If the mirage is not seen as water, I don't have to build dams to control it. So listen very carefully. All the scriptures suggest that we practice control of the mind, withdrawal from sense enjoyments, engage in self-inquiry. Even before that, if you're a very vulgar person, you might try stopping lying, cheating, and stealing. If you're going out and doing ecstasy on the weekends and getting drunk all the time, probably you want to give that up. That's appropriate at a particular level. But for the advanced student, even the mumukshu herself, the seeker after liberation, let her go. This is the image I've recently been using. So here's the self, here's the ego. It wants to get to the self. Oh, I'm going to be realized. Won't I be powerful? Everybody will think I'm so cool. I'll be holy, and then, oh, it's going to be so cool. I'm fair. No, that's not what happens. I want to get there. I want to get there. I'm doing practices. I'm doing practices. For us to think, I, the individual, am going to be there to say, I got it now. It's like the person who's getting ready to commit suicide and saying, I can't wait to see Aunt Mary's face at my funeral. She's been so mean that I'm going to really punish her. I'm just going to sit there and just glare at her at my funeral. The mark of the person of steady wisdom is they no longer experience themselves as a person. Inside, there's nobody there. No person is gone. The mind no longer sets up all the struggles and defenses and structures of ego. All right, one more.
Aprayatnat prayatnatva mudho napnoti nirritam tattva nishchayamatrina pragyo bhavati nirritaha. The fool does not attain tranquility either by action or by inaction. The wise one becomes tranquil merely by knowing the truth.
So as long as I think I'm a person, going back to my favorite paradigm, which comes from Yoga Vasishtha, what is the mind? What is my problem? Yoga Vasishtha says the mind is only three ideas. Jiva Bhavana, I think I'm a person. With that comes a feeling that I'm incomplete, I'm not enough. This spiritual poverty. Then the mind posits a goal. The goal only takes two forms. I either need to fix the world or I need to fix me. Third element, kartavya, obligatory action. I'll be happy when, it'll be better if I have to go from point A to point B. Let's get busy. That's all there is to my ignorance. It's all there is to the world. It's all there is to samsara. It's all there is to the dharma chakra. Just those three items. Tenacious. Once those are removed, and the key cool thing about it, you remove any one of them and the other two fall. Or you can do an integral yoga. You can work on all three of them. But when they fall, there's nothing left to be done. And then at the end of so many of these scriptures, we get these verses which seems so antithetical to what we've learned in the beginning. The very end of Viveka Chudamani, the Shishya says, wonder of wonders. I was a person and now it's gone. Not only that, the Shishya, the seeker after wisdom, isn't real. The guru isn't real. The scripture isn't real. Bondage and liberation are not real. The whole world isn't real. Only the self is real. There's nothing to do, nowhere to go. No longer anything to be achieved. But be careful, because if you take up that viewpoint too soon, you rationalize your suffering. Oh, my lousy relationship isn't real, so I don't need to do anything about it. Oh, the fact that I'm 200 pounds overweight isn't real, so I don't need to do anything. Oh, the fact that I hate my job. Well, hate isn't real, so there's nothing I need to do about it. I just won't go to work. Better yet, well, that isn't doing it, but that's not real. Let me try heroin. What you end up doing is rationalizing your suffering. So, as long as you think you're a person and identified with the body, to chatter about Brahma Satyam Jagan Mithya is nonsense. But if you've done the work, you have matured Vaya, and doubts about your essential nature are gone. all means, drop the mumukshu. All right, we'll end here. Om Purnamada Purnamidam Purnat Purnamudachyate Purnasya Purnamadaya Purnameva Vashishyate. Om Shanti 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 Hari Om Sri Guru Namaha. Hari Om. Thank you all. Did we have Jory today? Did he tune in?
No.